Okie dokie. Our last type of factoring is factoring with what's called the X box. And I know what you're thinking. No, it's not the gaming console. The Xbox is called the Xbox because that's exactly what we need. To factor this thing, we're going to need an X and we're going to need a box. And our boxes are, for this class anyways, are always going to be 2x2s. Okay. So we're going to need to do both that for 5 and for 6. Now, before we, jump into this head first, I do want to talk about why we need both here. And that's because if I look at my A for both of these, notice that A is not 1. So I have 3 terms, but A is not 1, so I can't use my shortcut. And if I can't use my shortcut, I have to do it the long way around, which is using the X box. Okay? So that's the reason why we have to do this. Now, the rules still apply before. Like, when I'm making my X, it's still A times C on the top and B on the bottom. But the actual process is going to be a little bit different because we're going to have to do a little bit more work. So with these ones, I like to always start off by listing my A, B, and C. A here is 2, B is 3, and C is 1. Okay, so A times C, 2 times 1, that's going to give me 2. And B, 3, is going to go on the bottom. And again, what goes here and here? Well, 2 is a prime number, fortunately for us. So it only has factors, if I list them. The only factors of 2 are 1 and 2. So my job is easy. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, let's come over to the box for a second. And I want us to pay attention to something. Our first term is going to go in the first box. So that 2x squared has to go in the first box. And our last term is going to go in the last box. So I'm going to have a plus 1. That's going to go right here. Now you're going to notice in my box I'm missing 2 terms. And that's exactly and precisely the reason why we had to make this x over here is because I only have 1 term. And so I have to split that into parts to complete this square. And so that's what we did when we factored, or when we completed the magic x. And so that 1 and that 2, they're going to go in here. And remember, they're coming from the magic x. So when we put that 1 in there, we got to stick an x next to it because it's coming from the x. Now, if I were to combine those together, I would get 3x. So these are equivalent things, which is perfect. Now, here's where we get to the last step. And this is the step that students typically struggle with, which is the actual factoring part. So basically, we're going to work backwards from what we did in 7A. In 7A, you were basically given these numbers on the outside and you multiply and you had to fill the box in on the inside. Now we're doing the opposite of that. So we've got to figure out what would go out here. And the one that I usually start with is this last one, this last number right here. And I start by saying, what would I have to multiply to get that 1? What are the factors of that number? Or like, what could I take out of this whole row? Now notice there's a 1 here and a 1 here. So guess what? My number that I can factor out of both of those is going to be 1. And since the only way to get 1 is to multiply it by itself, that's got to be 1 too. Now, once you've got the first part set up, well, what would I have to multiply 1 by to get 1x? Well, of course, that's just x. What would I have to multiply 2x by to get 2x squared? Well, that's going to be 2x. And so with a little bit of backwards thinking, we can get our 2 things put together. And our final step is to write this in factored form. So 2x plus 1 times x plus 1 is the factored form of this polynomial. I would like you to pause the video again, try out number 6 to the best of your ability, and then press play when you're ready to watch me go over it. All right, I sure hope you didn't just skip ahead, and I hope you actually tried that yourself because it's going to be more helpful for you. A times C here is going to be 3 times 3, and I shouldn't skip this step. A is 3, B is 10, C is 3. So 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. 10's here, and fortunately for us, 9, if I list the factors of 9, I could do 1 times 9 or 3 times 3. But guess what? The only ones that's going to add up to 9 or add up to 10 will just be 1 and 9. All right. Remember that my first term goes in the first box. So this is going to be 3x squared. And then my last term goes in the last box. So that's going to be plus 3. And then the 2 from our magic x, that is going to become our diagonals. So 1x and 9x. Our last step is to factor stuff out. Now, again, I always start with the last box. Fortunately, 3 is a prime number. The only way to get that is to multiply by 1 and 3. But since that's a 1, I know that this has to be the side that the 1 is on. So that's going to be 1 times 3 will give me this 3 right here. Well, what do I have to multiply 3 by to get? Or would I have to multiply 1 by to get 1x? Well, that's just x. And then what would I have to multiply that by to get 3x squared? Well, that's going to have to be 3x right there. And so again, your factored form is going to be 3x plus 1 times x plus 3. And we're done.